as we get started with today's math lesson, I've got a picture here that I want you to think about what do these two things, this penny and these base 10 blocks, what do they have to do with each other? So again, what do you think this penny has to do with these base 10 blocks? Well, today we're going to be talking about both of these. We'll start by talking about base 10 blocks, and then we'll kind of move into talking about pennies. Now, the reason that we have both of these on the screen and what they have to do with each other is they are two different items that we can use to compare. So we can use base 10 blocks to compare numbers. We can also use money to compare numbers. So today's goal by the end of the lesson is that I want you to be able to say, I can count pennies, which I'm sure most of you can already do. And then the second thing that I want you to be able to do is to be able to say that I can compare two amounts, or we could say two groups of pennies. So by the end, again, you're going to be able to count pennies, as well as you're going to be able to compare two different groups of pennies. So let's get started, and we're going to begin with some base 10 block practice. Now, we've been using animals quite a bit to show how we can compare two different numbers. Now, what I want to use today to get started is just reviewing and showing you how we can use base 10 blocks to compare. Now, this problem that I'm starting with is one of the easier problems that we'll talk about today. The first thing you need to do, since there is not a number written, is we need to actually figure out, well, how much do we have on each side? Now, you might be able just to look, but I'm going to cross them out as you guys count. So go ahead and count for me. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm going to put a number 5 up here so you can understand that that group of cubes is worth 5. Now over on the other side, you can see, let's count, we have 1 and 2. So up above that, I'm going to write the number 2. So you can see with my two groups here that I have a group of 5 cubes and a group of 2 cubes. Now that I know how much each group is worth, I can decide on using the correct greater than or less than symbol, which I have down here written below, with the letter A or the letter B. Now, do you think it would be the letter A, that symbol that needs to go in the circle, or do you think it would be the symbol above letter B? If you said A, that would be correct because, again, the alligator mouth always wants to eat the bigger number. So we would read this as saying 5 is greater than 2. Now, I said this was a little bit easier because it's only got cubes. Now, what happens if we mix in some longs? So now let's mix in some longs and cubes to compare them. Now it becomes a little trickier because we have to count both longs, which are worth 10, and cubes together. So remember, if you can't actually count 10, 20, you can count the cubes. You could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and then keep doing the same thing. So let's go ahead and practice counting this group over here. So we would have 10, this would be 20, 21, 22, 23. And I write that number by putting a 2 and then a number 3. That is how we would show 23 using base 10 blocks. Now let's see how many we have over on this side. So let's go ahead and count. We have 10, 11, and 12. So I would write a 1 and a 2 to show the number 12. Again, I can move these so it makes a little more sense. You can see that I have 2 tens and 3 cubes. And with my number 12, I have 1 long and then 2 cubes. So which symbol would I need to put in the middle? Would I put A in the middle, or would I put B in the middle? If I put B in there, what do you think? Is that right or wrong? This is not actually correct because, again, when we're using the greater than or less than symbol, the alligator always wants to eat the bigger number. So this would actually be over here trying to eat the number 23 because the number 23 is greater than the number 12. Let's try another one here. So again, the first thing we want to do is we want to count and see how much each group is worth. So let's start over here by counting this group on the left. So let's go ahead and count again. This would be 10, 20, 21, 22, and 23. So again, this one, just like the previous problem, this one was worth 23. Now over here you can see I've got quite a few cubes. Now normally if we have a group of 10 cubes, we trade for a long, but just for this example, we're going to count them just like they are right here. Let's go ahead and count. This one would be worth 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25, which would be written with a 2 and a 5. So now that I have two numbers written, I can compare the number 23 to the number 25. So which symbol down below would I use to show these two numbers being compared? Would it be A or would it be B? B would be the correct answer because this alligator mouth would then eat the bigger number. So the reason I put this problem the reason I put this problem into our math lesson is that I wanted you to understand that just because one problem has more longs than the other doesn't mean the group that has more longs is always going to be the bigger number. You just have to make sure that you always count each group to figure out what number goes with each group. Now we've practiced with base 10 blocks comparing numbers. Now let's talk about some pennies and using pennies to compare. Now you can see I put a picture of an Ninjago in here, and I also have a picture of Pikachu. And each of them both have the same amount of money right now. Now this is pretty easy that we would be able to compare and say, well, this is pretty easy because they both have the same amount. Now there's going to be times where maybe you get an allowance at home, or maybe when you get older and you get a job, you get money. Now there's going to be some times where you have more money, and then sometimes when you have less money. So we're going to pretend that we're comparing our amounts of money, and we're going to use pennies to do that today. So to do this right now, it's pretty easy to see that they are equal. Now, if I added another penny for Ninjago here, which one has more money now? It's pretty easy to see that we now have more money up for Mr. Ninjago up here compared to Pikachu. Now, I want to ask the question, which you're going to see a lot: how much more? Okay, so I want to know how much more does Mr. Ninjago actually have? Now, the easiest way to do this with pennies is to match up the ones that are the same. So what I mean by that is if I look at Ninjago, I'm going to connect the one that Ninjago has to one down below. Now you can see Ninjago still has a penny, but doesn't have one to connect down here with Pikachu. So when I would ask you, how much more does Ninjago have? You would be able to see that since we have one penny that is not connected to one that Mr. Pikachu has, Mr. Ninjago there has one more penny than Pikachu. So let me show you this as we get going with some more. So let's take and go ahead and add some more and make this a little tougher for you. So let's give Pikachu some more money here. So now if I have this and I want to say the question, how much more? The first thing you need to do is you need to figure out which person has more money. So would Ninjago have more money, or would Pikachu have more money? Hopefully you were able to see that Pikachu does not have as much money as Ninjago. So Ninjago up here actually has the most money again. And then comes that magic question that can be tough is, well, how much more does he have? So if we do what I just asked you to do, which is to connect them, I'm going to connect the Ninjago one down to Pikachu. And then I'm going to connect the same thing, the next penny, down to the one below. Now, do I have any more pennies to connect? I do not. So how many do I have that are not connected? 2 would be correct. So when I said how much more does Ninjago have, you would be able to say 2. Let's do one more here. Let's go ahead and actually let's do this. And let's add one more here. Let's give Pikachu some money. So now again, the first thing you need to do is you need to figure out who has more money. And you can see Pikachu's pennies go a lot farther than what Ninjago's do. So we can say, well, Pikachu has more money. But the thing that I need to do is I need to figure out, well, again, that question, how much more does Pikachu have? So connect them to find out. So we connect these two. We connect Ninjago down to Pikachu again. Same thing. We keep connecting until we run out of being able to connect the pennies. Now, the ones that are left over, you can see, would be the answer for that question of how much more. So with this one, we would say that Pikachu has a total of 3 more. Now, let's say that I give you a question that instead of actually having pennies showing you, Let's say that I just gave you some words. Let's say that Ninjago has 5 pennies. And let's do Pikachu has 3 pennies. So now, if you're ever giving a story problem where you have numbers written, but you don't actually have pennies, it's going to be your job to draw pictures of pennies. So, for example, it says Ninjago has 5 pennies. So let's get rid of these pennies because you're not going to have those on your paper. You're going to have a pencil that you can use. So let's say that Ninjago has 5 pennies. So I'm going to go 1, there's a P for penny, there's 2, 3, 4, and 5. Pikachu has 3, so 1, 2, and 3. So I can see now, right away, Ninjago has more pennies. But I want to know that question again, how much more does Ninjago have? So we can do the same exact thing. I connect them and see which ones don't have any connected. So after I've connected them, you can see that Ninjago is left with 2 more than Pikachu. So again, that'll wrap up today's lessons talking about how we can use money to compare two different values. So what I mean by that is we can compare 2 different piles of pennies and see who has more as well as how much more. We'll keep working on this a little bit more in small group today.